Hello class, this is Mr. Broussard and I'm sending you this video for the third week of our beginning English course. I want to make sure you know what it is that you need to do for this week. In fact, I'll go ahead and move off of the old announcement and look at the new one. I have posted this week's assignments under announcements, just to let you know what you need to read and or write, and I'll go ahead and tell you about that in this video here. First things first, there are 4 chapters on what you need to read. You need to read chapters 1, 2, and 3. That deals with critical reading and writing. It's mainly to let you know the why behind what it is that you're doing. It's also a good way of figuring out different pre-writing methods that might work best for you. And I would make sure to figure that out by figuring out whichever way you best learn. You could then figure out the best way for you to and figure out the best way for you to study on your own for your other classes. It can also help you try to figure out what's best pre-writing method for you when you do write for any course, which one will work best, which will allow you to generate your ideas better and get them out there and get them more organized. So that'll help there. It also allow you to understand the connection between the thought process and the writing process, and how one reads to write and writes to read. So those things don't happen in a vacuum. You actually do one to help the other. The more you read, the better writer you become. The more you write, the better you'll understand others' readings and be able to do that in all types of readings. That's both for fun, but also for your textbooks for many classes, including this one, but also other classes. So the more you do one, the better it'll help the other. So that's why you want to read those 3 chapters. There will also be a chapter on parts of speech, chapter 18, parts of speech, and that's the first of our grammar chapters that you'll be dealing with. So make sure to read that. There will be a Canvas quiz on that chapter in a couple of weeks. I don't know exactly what week that'll be, but it will be up and coming. So make sure to read the chapter, and then in a couple of weeks you will deal with a more of a practical quiz, one that's not just, it's not going to be memorizing terms at all. I don't like those types of quizzes anyways. It's going to be more along the lines of how to practically apply and use what you've learned from that chapter and to apply it to your actual writing. So you'll learn these quizzes, you'll learn how to use that in actual examples, and then through the examples, hopefully use it in your own writing. So that's my hope for that chapter. So chapter 18. And then the one bit of written work that you'll have this week will be to write journal 2. That's all you'll be doing for the written part, is to go on to the second journal. It has been opened for you, and it's basically, and this is the one time I'm allowing this, because in general, never have the famous person quote, but that I am okay with that on this one assignment because it's asking for it. Basically, put down a quote, the person quote, and who said it, and what they said, and then how it's influenced on you and what you like about it. And so it's a nice way to get that out there, but then of course never ever use it again in any of your writing, because that's a boring high school writing device. But it is a good way of getting that information out and to understand, even in your own, put it in your words, why you like something, why you like particularly that quote. So that's what you'll do there. And really that's it. That's it as far as this week, because the next week you'll have only 2 assignments. One will be a reading quiz on the illustrative chapter that you hopefully read last week, and then the other will be to work on the illustrative rhetorical mode paragraph, because then the week after that is when that will be due. But we'll get to that when we get to back next week. This is a very quick video. Hope you're all doing well. So I just want to make sure you knew what it is you needed to do for this week. So again, read chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 18. 1, 2, and 3 deal with critical reading and writing, and chapter 18 deals with parts of speech. And then write the second journal, type the second journal. I always have to simply say that, because you'll have people say write, and you'll think handwriting. Now, think of writing as any form which includes type. So type, obviously, and turn it in through Canvas. I looked at your I looked at your diagnostics, and I noted where the main issues were for each of you individually. As always, I always find that the big issues are always what we call the fatal errors, and that is run-on sentences, comma splices, not having complete sentences, and writing in the second person, as well as issues with usage of comma in particular to connect independent and dependent clauses. Basically, one side would be a sentence on its own, the other side wouldn't be a sentence on its own. So if you want to keep them together, use a comma. And then learning that rule, and also sometimes having introductory word, phrase, or clause where you have that little introductory little blip right there, and then a full-on sentence afterwards, and you keep that together, but you also must use a comma in that location as well. But the main issues are the fatals, and just to let you know, if you've never heard this before, comma splices is when you have a comma separating 2 independent clauses, i.e. they could be sentences on each side. That's not supposed to be. You never put a comma to separate 2 independent clauses. You either have a semicolon there, you either have the comma there, but then add the coordinate conjunction, your fanboys, and I noted those a lot on your diagnostics. For and, but, nor, yet, so, and for and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Thank you. I should know that by now. Anytime you have that, it's used as a coordinate conjunction, you have a comma before it. And so that was another issue I saw a lot on. But it's a good way of correcting if you have a comma splice. Leave the comma there, but then put the coordinate conjunction, because that coordinate conjunction turns the second part of that sentence into a dependent clause, and therefore it becomes no longer incorrect to have the comma there, because then you're linking an independent clause with a dependent clause with a comma, which is what it should be. But you never link two independent clauses with a comma, because that's the comma slice. And the other way of correcting it would be to have it be two completely different sentences. So in punctuation, in the first independent clause, capitalize the first word of the second independent clause, and then have them be two completely different sentences. And that's how you correct comma splices. You do the same thing if you're correcting a run-on sentence. The run-on sentence is only different from the comma splice in that instead of having a comma there, you have nothing there. It just runs on itself. So then you have to add the comma and the coordinating conjunction if that's what you want to do, or just add the semicolon, or add in punctuation, capitalize the first word of the second independent clause, and there you've corrected the run-on sentence as well. Not having complete sentence. One of the biggest issues about all those other things about independent and dependent clauses, quite frankly, are people not knowing what independent and dependent clauses are and what truly makes a sentence. A sentence has three parts to it. Unfortunately, a lot of students, very unfortunately, learn that there are only two parts. Nope, there are three. The parts are learned. The subject, what I learned as the predicate, but what you learned as probably the verb part. So I usually call it the predicate verb part. So the subject and the predicate verb, which most students get. But the part they don't get is you must complete the thought. You must complete the thought as the whole of the sentence. Otherwise, you leave your ringer hanging. It's like, okay, I have the subject, I have my predicate verb, and then what? And then there's nothing there because you stopped your sentence prematurely because you didn't complete the thought. Always complete the thought. And understand that when you have all three elements together, that makes an independent clause. It can be a sentence by itself. If you lack any of the elements, then it's a dependent clause. It's dependent on something else to make it a full-fledged sentence, usually and always an independent clause. And you can put them together, an independent clause with a dependent clause with a comma. Or you could add the extra element that is needed and make it an independent clause, which could make it a sentence if you want it to be a sentence by itself, or it can be merged in with a dependent clause to make it a sentence, but you do that with a comma. But if you have two independent clauses and you want them kept together as a sentence, you have to use a semicolon. That's the only way of correcting that. So that's how you would correct those issues. And so I usually find not knowing what's a complete sentence is usually what causes the problems in comma splices and run-on sentences, and in issues of linking independent and dependent clauses with a comma. Because if you don't know what it is, and how are you going to know how to put it together, which is understandable. So learning the one will help you with the others. And then the last one, and this is a big, writing in the second person. It is impossible by the very nature of laws, science, and physics for an individual writing a composition to be in the second person. Now, there are only a few exceptions to this rule, but it always involves being in quoted material, either quoted as direct line of dialogue from a work of literature or movies or music or whatever you're quoting, or if you're doing a narrative of your own that you're making up, your own characters and what they're saying, or when you do get to a source material work, which you won't get into until Comp 1, having that source done properly word for word in quote marks. If it's in quote marks, then the word used fine, depending on or the form of you, your, yours, or any form of you is fine, because it's not the individual writing it's saying, it's somebody else who's saying it. But the individual writing can never say the word you. It can never be in the second person in the composition. When you do that, that's a fatal error. And the fatal errors that I noted cost you more than a regular error. Usually is 1 point off. A fatal error is 7 points off every single time. 7 points off until the fourth or fifth. So until the fifth one, it's only 4 points off because the rubric won't let me take any more points off. But by then, you've got a 68. And this class, 68 is an F. Remember, it's a beginning class, so 68 is an F. So please make sure to correct these things. But those are the main issues that I saw. If I noted any other issues and you want to kind of have some clarity about what I mean by that, first things first, go and get a hold of the Learning Lab Writing Center. And many of you, I made that note, you better get a hold of them. I can't make it mandatory, but I'm just telling you right now, if you don't, you're probably going to fail the course because you've got to correct these issues before you want things that are actually graded that you want to show up on your grade book. So contact them. If you need any more clarification beyond that, ask me, and I'll try to make it as clear as possible as much as I can, considering my issues that I'm dealing with right now. So make sure you're aware of that. And again, hope you're all well, and I will make you another video. There you are, next week.